Hey there, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia Vigilantes review. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, Episode 8, Major. Not really much else to say beyond that, so guess we better jump into it. The episode starts off with a cold opening where Koichi's chasing down a criminal that's escaping from what I would assume is the scene of a crime on a motorcycle. Remember last episode when I was a bit salty that despite all the training that Koichi's been doing, it doesn't seem to have translated to any sort of power boost considering he just gets wrecked by any villain he fights, minor or major? I mean, he lost to the soccer penguin last episode, who was then immediately pummeled and subdued by the X-Men middle schoolers. Here, at long last, we finally get to see just how much his powers developed, with him being able to now keep pace with a speeding motorbike, whereas previously, when we were first introduced to his power in episode 1, he was barely faster than a bicycle. He might not be developing much as a fighter just yet, but at least he's managed to improve his speed dramatically. Not his reaction time though, as whilst he talks to Pop about how he plans to simply follow this guy and keep an eye on him until the cops show up, the guy reveals he has stretchy legs and kicks Koichi in the face, sending him spiraling out of control and into the path of an oncoming truck. Yikes. Rest in peace, Crueler. Enter Captain Celebrity, who swoops in and saves Koichi just in the nick of time before chasing down the bike and beating his ass before coming over to talk to Koichi and Pop. He's one of those guys that's absurdly strong for a person who doesn't have a strength quirk. Pretty sure later on, they explicitly tell you his quirk is simply flight. And yet there he is, carrying a motorbike on one shoulder like it's nothing at all. If this is what comes of simply lifting weights in this world, then maybe Koichi needs to hit the gym. Hell, even the scrawny dudes can have the most absurd levels of super strength, as we saw with Stain not too long ago. Dude was holding back this rock dude all on his own, with his own strength. Anyway, Captain Celebrity is pretty much, hey, what if All Might was a massive douche? He does the laugh and is all loud and obnoxious, but not in the endearing way that All Might is. He's rude and arrogant. He talks down to Koichi in his attempts to help him, but not in the usual way where the hero wants the person to not break the law or to remain safe. It's more rudely put, as if he finds him goofy and lame. He also signs Koichi's All Might hoodie without asking, which is what truly puts him in Koichi's bad books. All the other stuff, nah, it doesn't matter. But like he said earlier in a previous episode, when you go for the hoodie, you've officially taken it too far. I like that this is a consistent character trait that we're seeing. We get the intro theme, and when we return, it's to watch an in-universe newsreel for the arrival of Captain Celebrity from America to Japan. The way the package is framed is to showcase Christopher Skyline, aka Captain Celebrity, as a true hero that's now making his way to Japan to serve as his new base of operations. They even show him lifting a sinking cruise ship out of the water all on his own. God damn. So I guess his flight makes him super strong too, or something like that. Even for a super strength character, he is absurdly strong. I suppose though that this is intentionally meant to be offset by the fact that he has some very obvious character flaws. Knuckle Duster tells the group that whilst they're treating it as a puff piece in Japan and being all excited for an American hero to come here, the reality is that back in the USA, despite his top 10 ranking, he's known as Captain Catastrophe, and has numerous lawsuits and other scandals that he's dealing with. Thus, his sabbatical to Japan whilst the heat dies down. I do wonder what the lawsuits could even be about. Overly forceful attacks? Lack of care on the job or something? Maybe something like when Mr. Incredible sued for saving that guy trying to commit suicide? I guess when we first saw him, he did rather carelessly send that guy flying and then throw him around a bit. Then we see later on when he fights Godzilla that he causes as much damage as possible. Kind of curious for more on this guy. Anyway, we finish the scene with Koichi still seething about the damage to his hoodie as he desperately tries to scrub off the stain. We then cut over to the Godzilla attack, which is yet another one of those villains who's getting juiced up on trigger and going berserk. My god, this dude has an insane quirk. Even without the power boost, it must have been great. The original manga in its epilogue seems to suggest that eventually, heroes are not going to be needed. Then I look at the likes of this guy and I think, nah, that ending's stupid, they definitely will be. The dino keeps stomping around, smashing buildings and likely hurting people from the impact, whilst Pop, Step and Koichi try to direct people away. Oh, and we also saw Hachisuka here, I guess after having given this guy some trigger, although she has decided to cut her losses with him because whilst he has a strong quirk, it's also one that's going to attract heroes too quickly for her to gather any data. So I guess this is just for the sake of chaos. I can respect that. Koichi hears a child crying for what he assumes is another child named Masahiko, with Captain Celebrity arriving on the scene at the exact same time. And here's where we learn that this guy isn't just a bit pompous, but he's also a massive dickhead. He's willing to let some child potentially die because the press hasn't set itself up yet, and so he wouldn't get full clout. And also because the cops haven't actually officially put out a request for hero backup yet, so he's under no real obligation to do anything. When you think about it, it makes him seem truly terrible, completely amoral and awful. However, I think the scene does a good job of distracting you and brushing over just how terrible he is by giving him this big goofy countdown, complete with a custom theme song sung by a guy in his mission control room with all his staff dancing along. Judging by how the episode ends, you're not supposed to hate this guy, and I think this scene does a good job of making you forget how terrible a person he is. But I guess we'll have to see how his story develops. Meanwhile, Koichi is presented as rather the opposite type of person. He has absolutely zero obligation to do anything. He's not even a licensed hero, and yet he tries to go and save the child, who's in turn revealed to be a dog. And he takes the dog with him, saying that all life is precious. At the same time, Captain Celebrity's just treating this as one big joke, being overly dazzling and theatrical to try to seem impressive and garner popularity, whilst also not acting like a true hero, causing a whole heap of collateral damage without a care in the world. Does he get his comeuppance? No. He wins the fight with ease, saves Koichi and the dog from getting crushed by the rubble that he caused, and takes all the credit, seeming like a massive chad to everybody all the while. He signs Koichi's hoodie, again, and poses for the cameras whilst Koichi's mocked and scorned for not evacuating when he should have. Man, that is rough, buddy. Stain would have a stroke if he ever met this guy. He is everything that he claims all the other heroes in the world are. Of course, after the rescue mission, Koichi is feeling miserable and rather useless, unable to even save a dog on his own. He's briefly made to feel better about himself when the little girl whose dog he saved thanks him, until Captain Celebrity flies over and tells him he needs to stop doing this. Once again, not because it could put the untrained, unlicensed Koichi in danger or get him in trouble, no. It's so he doesn't spoil his perfect shot by scuttling through the photos with his fanboy gear on. This guy really sucks, but he's quickly becoming one of my favorite characters. The way he's just so unapologetically self-centered, rude and annoying, and yet at the same time is extremely competent, it's just very funny and compelling. Plus, it actually gives Koichi a bit more character when he hates on him. Prior to this episode, I found Koichi a bit boring at times. He's just very vanilla with few defining traits. Thus, getting this more jealous and angsty side has been good for his development. Later that evening, there's a huge cleanup operation ongoing to repair the damage caused by the Godzilla vs. Captain Celebrity fight, with some people still injured and stuck inside a building that's about to come down. Of course, Koichi gets in there ready to help, only to find that two people, a man and a woman, both of whom can't walk. He's stuck. He apparently can't carry them both, even though we saw him carry Soga when he was enlarged by Trigger and weighed down by all those metal quills on his back. But I guess now he's too weak. Okay. Things are looking bleak until Captain Celebrity turns up proposing that they work together. And he's such a slimy turd. I love it. We've seen him lift up a cruise ship. He could have grabbed all three of them no problem. But instead, he picks up the girl so he can get the proper optics for his headlines and photos, whilst making Koichi pick up and carry all the way downstairs the much heavier man. He then saves the two of them from being crushed by falling debris, and he gets all the glory, whilst Koichi is once again ignored. Again, oof. Such a humbling experience. It then goes from bad to worse when Captain Celebrity decides to demolish the building, whilst his newly arrived squad of cheerleaders do a routine. And who's the leader of the troop? Why, it's Koichi's crush, Makoto. Dude just can't stop losing today. It's getting rather sad. Also, I love that Popstep was 100% on board with the whole performance angle until she learned who was in the group, and then suddenly it's shameful and indecent. Makoto notices them and runs over for an interview, and so they're forced to flee to maintain their identities, or rather, Koichi's identity. It goes from bad to worse for the crueler here, as Captain Celebrity then flies over and starts laying the moves on Makoto, suggesting they need to get to know one another better. Wink, wink. And she immediately sets up a lunch date for them, whilst Koichi copes and seethes in an alleyway. Yeah, I'm loving this episode so far. It's just been really funny to see it play out this way, and have Koichi, even when it looks like he's going to triumph, just be humiliated again and again by this showboater. Knuckle Duster then approaches them to tell us that Captain Celebrity is a bit of a dog. He's faced many different lawsuits, most of them from women, the biggest from his wife, who's suing for damages. The implication being he cheated, so I guess it's a big divorce case and she wants him to pay up. But what about the other lawsuits? Is it sexual harassment? He seems very flirtatious here, but when Knuckles is talking about all these lawsuits, and all the women he's seen with, they don't seem to be under duress. Is the joke meant to be that in this version of the United States you can sue for being cheated on, even if you were the mistress? This guy does seem like the type to have numerous girlfriends in different cities. Or are we meant to think he's a creep? I suspect by how he's framed later on in the episode that we're simply supposed to think he's a player whose ex has sued him for damages, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense. Then again, this show's trying to rehabilitate Soga, who's an absolute creep, so who knows? We then skip ahead a couple of days to see Makoto waiting for a meetup with the captain. Koichi has seemingly engaged his stalker mode, because I doubt she told him about this or where she was going to be. So what's he been following her? Big yikes from me. Man, I've enjoyed this episode a lot, but Koichi's just being torn apart today. Even worse for him is that Captain Celebrity once again gets the drop on him and mocks him for being a stalker to his face. This in turn gets Makoto's attention, and they all engage in a conversation, with Celebrity telling Koichi that he and Makoto are going on a date. Makoto, however, instantly corrects him, saying it's a business luncheon. Earlier at the demolition site, she seemed so willing to go along with what he was saying and not really pushing back on his flirting. But now Koichi's there, she immediately corrects the facts. I suspect she might like him too. Although none of this means anything to Koichi, who has to stand there watching a celebrity picks her up and flies her away. Finally, you get that beautiful catharsis they've been building to all episode. They arrive and are having some champagne with him flirting hard, only for Makoto to get a phone call from his wife Pamela, revealing that they're now friends. He panics and flies away to stop a bank robbery, but this time, no theatrics, no flirting. He even snatches Koichi to hang out with him and Makoto so his wife won't be suspicious. This in turn gets him under the thumb of Makoto forever, who seemingly moves from cheerleader to brand manager by using this as blackmail. Ruthless, but well deserved. It turns out Koichi inspires her with the rebranding, because instead of being the hunky hero, he's going to be pushed now as a cool action man for boys to adore. It's actually pretty smart considering how much trouble he was getting into, and it was great to see that moment on his face where he realizes that he's been completely subjugated by his wife and now by Makoto. It was a very fun episode today, with a great arc that carries across these various different scenes. Probably my favourite episode of the season so far. Feels like it's really kicking into gear more and more, and I hope it keeps going. We then have a fairly extended post-credit scene where Koichi gets a phone call from his dad who's apologising because he couldn't stop his mum from planning a visit, causing Koichi to have a meltdown and panic and desperately try to clean, whilst he rants to Popstep about how he's told so many lies to his mum because she was completely opposed to him coming to Tokyo in the first place. The key lie being, he has a girlfriend, and so now he doesn't know what to do. Popstep immediately blushes and panics and runs, just as his mum arrives, and that's for the best. Imagine how that scene would play out. Yes, mother, my life is great, and here is my girlfriend, the 15-year-old. We then finally get the preview of the next episode, where it seems there's going to be a mix-up of Makoto and Pop both posing as his girlfriend, with I guess Makoto actually taking the spot, before they get caught up in some My Neighbor Totoro antics. And it seems that Makoto's also going to discover that Koichi's the crawler. I'm actually really excited to see how that plays out. So with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of this episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.